The purpose of this presentation is to dispel 3 myths commonly held by teachers and in the process unpack what is meant by giftedness. This quote, "Everyone has an equal right to inequality," is the premise of understanding the issues surrounding gifted and talented students. The 3 common myths are: all students are gifted. Gifted students can succeed on their own. They do not need our help. Gifted education is elitist. Everyone has an equal right to inequality. Let's consider the rights of our children. All teachers do agree that our children have equal rights to shelter, justice, privacy, protection, food, and lastly, education. But does equal rights to education mean that all students should be taught the same way? This is a commonly used cartoon that depicts this. Albert Einstein once pointed out that if the fish was judged by its ability to climb a tree throughout its whole life, it will then live believing that it is stupid its whole life. Let's look at the myths. Myth 1. Every child is gifted. Some teachers who are against gifted education claim that every child is gifted so that they do not need to have to spend the resources and time on a separate gifted program. In this instance, the use of gifts is often confused with strengths. In this cartoon, different students are displaying different activities. They may be more competent in one activity than in another. In this case, we can regard a person's strength as a person's competency in one field of activity. For example, Jane here may be better at painting than Julie. In other words, Jane's strength is in painting, whereas Julie's strength is in ballet. In gifted education, strength is not the same as gift. In gifted education, giftedness refers to untrained and spontaneously expressed outstanding natural abilities, in this case gifts, in at least one ability domain that places the individual to at least among the top 10% of age peers. Talents, on the other hand, is defined as the outstanding mastery of systematically developed competencies in at least one field of human activity, again placing that student in among the top 10% of learning peers. This is the model that has been widely adopted by Australian schools. Garnier's differentiated model of giftedness and talent. In this model, gifts are defined as those outstanding natural abilities. Garnier demarcated the different domains: intellectual, creative, social, perceptual, muscular, and motor control. The talents are those competencies in the different fields, such as academic, technical, science and technology, arts, social services, administration, business operations, games, sports, and athletics. So what does this model mean about the giftedness of our students? A child may be born with gifts, but if these are not cultivated, the gifts will not develop into achievements or talents. For example, the student may be very good at drawing, but if the student is not trained or developed further, the student's gift will not be realized or identified as an artistic talent. This cartoon is very telling of Garnier's idea of gifts. Little Joe is clearly gifted in the intellectual domain of mathematics ahead of his peers. Since he displays mathematical abilities far beyond his age peers, Little Joe's gift is in mathematics. His gift, not strength, is in mathematics. Are we supposed to think of the gifted as just the Einsteins and Marie Curies, who occur very infrequently in our lifetime? Let's look at this graph. In terms of the intellectual domain, a student's IQ score is used to determine her giftedness. This graph shows the distribution of students within a normal population. It is typically defined: mildly gifted students fall in the region of IQ scores of 115 to about 130. From an IQ score of 130, we have the moderately gifted student. Then from a score of 145 and above, we have the highly gifted. And beyond 160, we have the exceptionally and profoundly gifted. What does this mean in a typical comprehensive school? If we have a mixed ability classroom, every 1 in 6 to 1 in 44 will be mildly gifted. This means that we can find on average about 3 to 4 gifted students in a mixed ability classroom. For highly gifted, perhaps 1 in a whole school. And for profoundly gifted, researchers have claimed that you probably could experience that Einstein-like student in your whole career as a teacher. Just as we have a range of students, the graph showed us that we have a range of giftedness. A number of researchers have over the years drawn out characteristics of the gifted student. I have included some characteristics identified by Clark. However, the list is not exhaustive, and different researchers have added onto these characteristics. So gifted students have ability to learn faster, extremely well-developed memory, advanced language development and verbal ability, advanced problem-solving skills, highly curious, reason at a level far beyond their age, and so on. Now this leads to another common myth among teachers, that gifted students, after all, are intellectually better off, then surely they can make it on their own. The reality is the opposite. In fact, only a few gifted students actually succeed. Research has shown that those that do often come from white upper middle class, or wealthy, or with parents who actively provide outside school activities. Students from poor or at-risk backgrounds, such as those from minority groups or the ELAD students, fall far further behind or may not be identified at all through their school life. Some, in fact, drop out from school. Research has shown that while gifted children enter school so eager to learn, many in fact are disappointed that they are moving at the same pace as their fellow peers. Such children end up feeling less enthusiastic to learn, and this leads them to achieve at a mediocre level or even far below average achievement. This results in what we call gifted underachievement. So if they are not challenged, they become bored, or end up in mischief, or they end up hating school. Half of the gifted, in fact, do not perform to their ability according to research. 10 to 20% of them are dropouts, and 15 to 40% are at risk of significantly underachieving. The many factors that affect how gifted students develop their gifts into talents in a field have been suggested in Gagne's model. If we look at Gagne's model again, the catalysts, such as environmental and interpersonal, all affect gifted students' development, and often teachers are crucial in the development of gifts. These gifts need to be nurtured into talents. Which brings the question of equality or equal rights. If students with disabilities are provided with support or undergo programs to help them achieve, why not gifted students? All children, after all, have the right to learn. More importantly, all children have the right to learn something new every day. Teachers need to recognize that there's nothing more unequal than to treat all students, who by their very nature are different, so wrong to treat them equally. This brings to the light of the third common myth among teachers, that gifted education is elitist. Interestingly, the word elitist, when applied to gifted education, is always treated with a negative meaning. But when it comes to sports, as highly profiled by Australian society, elite sports is considered positive. This idea that because gifted education is elitist presumes that equal rights to education should be considered as a one-size-fits-all education. Teachers feel that identifying and separating gifted students from other students will end up with the gifted students becoming more arrogant and proud. The research shows the opposite, however. Gifted students in fact behave more arrogant and proud only if they are in a mixed ability classroom, where their ability is clearly ahead of their peers. At the same time, by identifying gifted students, they become socially and emotionally traumatized by the labeling. However, the research on this has been unclear. In one research, the gifted label is positive. On another, it's been considered negative. And yet in other research, it can be avoided by ensuring that a broad range of high-ability students are identified in the program instead of the selected few. In our Australian context, the idea that gifted education is elitist can be countered given the prevailing move in education in Australia. The Melbourne Declaration in 2008 promotes equity and excellence among our learners. This was soon followed by the change in the Australian curriculum, which also designed to meet the needs of gifted and talented students. Gifted education is not elitist as long as it is integrated into the total school curriculum. Sydney Catholic Schools has, for example, the Gifted Education Policy. This policy provides direction for our schools in addressing the needs of gifted and talented students, the elements of which are identified in the position paper. In many other schools, gifted education policies, as well as in the Catholic schools, the guiding principles of such programs have been adopted, so that any notion of gifted education as being elitist is removed. There are different types of programs to meet the learning needs for gifted students, such as acceleration, curriculum compacting, and so on, as listed. Vast research has shown conclusively that when gifted programs are properly designed within the school, such students advance at a faster pace than in mixed ability groups. Research has also shown gifted students' academic growth advances by as much as an additional year in the case of acceleration. Pull-up programs show that gifted students progress at a faster pace, whereas those who are not in such programs are not affected negatively nor positively in such separation. However, in mixed ability groups, there is no academic gain for anyone, the gifted or the non-gifted. Which brings us back to the following quote. Everyone has an equal right to inequality. So in conclusion, to come back to the idea that all students are not equal, our gifted students who have outstanding abilities that are waiting to be nurtured, they have an equal right to be treated unequally according to their abilities, so that their gifts can be developed into recognizable talent. Thank you.